Hello and welcome, chaotic people. This is the Long Rest Podcast. My name is Kyle, and these are my co-hosts, Jackson and Rob. Today we will be talking about the ingredients to a good story. Come sit with us. Jackson, what is your favorite ingredient to use in storytelling?
Thank you for bringing this in, Kyle. For those of you guys who are new listeners, I hope that you will enjoy your time around the campfire with us as we sit around and drink our ale. In regards to a story, I mean, there are so many elements, I think, that you can do well that are kind of hard to define, right? Tone, I think, is something people throw around a lot, but it's difficult to be consistent with. But I would say that's probably my favorite element, the thing I guess, bond to the strongest. When a story has a really consistent tone, regardless of what's going on with the characters, kind of a very consistent theme or series of themes, I would say that's my favorite. Now, the reason I kind of bring that up, I won't reveal my answer yet. I'll go last. But that specifically brings me to what I would consider an example of a story I think is expertly written, perfectly written. I mean, as soon as I say that, something jumps to my mind. But I'll actually key this one up to Rob.
Uh-oh.
Rob, outside of D&D and preferably after 1000 AD, what do you think is a story that is expertly written? Something that master classes, the art of storytelling.
A masterclass story.
Can't be the Odyssey or the Epic of Gilgamesh. I know those are probably...
I mean, I can just bring up all of the classics and whatnot, but since we've already established we're from Alabama, To Kill a Mockingbird is probably one of the premier epic stories from the U.S. in the 20th century.
Yeah.
And, it has everything.
Well, okay, so you say it has everything. What specifically sets it apart?
Well, let's see now. You have your hero, Atticus Finch. You have your narrator, Scout. You have your villains. Unfortunately, I forget the name of the particular man that was the villain and whatnot. And of course, you have your victim, and unfortunately, I forget his name right now too. But not only that, there's a sense of engagement with all of the characters. You could see yourself in every one of their places and positions, and the crime, the problem that they're all facing is of course one that's tormented American society for 150 years, actually quite longer than that. So it's relevant.
Okay, so what I'm hearing kind of from you is you enjoy not only the complete kind of, I don't know how to put it, but the complete set of dishes in terms of the characters, right? They set up a whole bunch of different positions for the characters to be it the victim, the villain, the hero, and they flesh those out well.
Yeah.
And the relevance. Is relevance part of the driver for you?
The moment you brought up the topic, because we don't really talk about the topics at a time, we kind of ad-lib them as we get here. The moment you brought up the topic and the cooking analogy and whatnot, I was like, okay. All along we've talked about how this podcast is by DMs for DMs so that we can create this community. And one of the things that I've tried to reinforce over and over again is we're not just talking about how to be a good DM, but how to make the DM fun for DMs.
Sure.
So when I talk about relevance of the story, it's almost like the spice at the end, that extra touch and whatnot. We're going to talk today about how to make a story that's engaging to the players, that hits all the right elements. But, here it's also got to be something that's dessert for you, the DM, right? So after you've told a good story with engaging characters, with an interesting storyline and all that, it's also got to have that je ne sais quoi that makes you happy too. So you got to do it all. Well, you don't have to do it all, but it's that last bit that I don't think the DMs have been granting themselves the permission to do. I got to have a good game for my players. I've got to have interesting monsters. I got to have a good battle. I've got to have great skill checks. What makes it interesting for you too? And so, I've mentioned this in some of the earlier podcasts. Sometimes, whatever's in my life that is kind of something I want to think deeply on, I'm going to be thinking deeply about my campaign. So if I've dealt with a very narcissistic ex, which I talked about before, then my lead character is going to have some very narcissistic tendencies or something like that. If I'm particularly vexed about a social problem and whatnot, I may do the Star Trek thing and pull that in. Again, not wanting to sacrifice a good story, but once I feel like I have a good story and I've got good characters, then this is the little flavoring on the top that makes it fun for me too.
Interesting. So I don't think I'd really thought of doing that, kind of using the campaign as a medium, maybe, for lack of a better term. So Kyle, I'll kick it over to you. I mean, if you've got examples of that, or just want to talk about what your favorite story is.
Well, so my examples of best storytelling, I have a few. I don't want to go over all three because I feel like that'd be too much time. Unless y'all want to hear it.
Pick one at random.
Click,
stories. Stories that tell themselves the way they want to be told rather than the way you expect.
Okay.
For example, I play video games. They're not quite obscure, but they're not well known either.
Sure.
One of them is What Remains of Edith Finch. Whole story is told to you by the character Edith Finch, and you are under the assumption you are playing as her throughout the game. Mm-hmm. It is revealed to you at the end she is dead, and this is her son reading her diary as he follows her footsteps through this story.
And you don't find that out till the end?
And you don't find that out to the end.
Nice.
And there's all sorts of things where the gameplay changes completely and the tone just switch. It tells itself the way it wants to be told.
Yeah.
Another example is Journey or Sword of the Sea, games where no words are ever spoken by any character, but you can tell what the story is by reading their actions.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Also, spoiler warning. We'll go ahead and roll that one out there for mostly To Kill a Mockingbird. But we can probably put a little banner in there. No, I think that's a super important element of storytelling. And that's, earlier I hit on there are these intangibles that I think are hard to really nail down and describe, but can execute a highly compelling story if you do it right. And something like having the story almost insist upon its own messaging, right? Have it tell its own secondary narrative within what's been written already. Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, you have the story of this woman's life, but there's this secondary narrative of you're observing it through a loved one's eyes, right? Which gives it its own flavor, it gives it its own tone. There's a whole lot dispensed to the story from a very simple tweak. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not that different than if the reader themselves was reading the diary, or rather the player in this instance. But I feel like it's those little nuances that often make stories more long-lasting.
Yeah. That
give kind of that classical push into something you won't forget.
Yeah. So let me add to that. We're talking about that little extra and whatnot. So, like we're saying, we're having our dessert first. I'm sure later on we'll get into, building the building blocks and whatnot. But it doesn't have to be just an interesting story twist. I was thinking of the original Knights of the Old Republic. Mm-hmm. The story twist was there was, a Jedi that had turned to the dark side, and you were trying to defeat his apprentice, and also trying to figure out why he went to the dark side. And about halfway through the game, you find out you're him. So now that's old enough that I imagine you guys are going to tell me you've never played it, and I
tried.
Oh my God!
I've seen it, but
what is wrong? Oh,
it crashed 7 times. In 1 hour.
Yeah, that's.
You
that's
were
the
like
type of
4
book
or
you do.
5 when I was playing that, and you were a little upset at me killing all the animals on screen. I had to stop playing around you. So
Kind of checks out.
Wasn't there at some point where you had to like fight a female Sith or something?
yes,
And I was
yes,
like,
and I fought a girl, and you went around and said, "Daddy killed a girl." Oh gosh, I remember that one too. But
Hello, 911.
oh my goodness! But fortunately, it was 1,000 years ago, so
Right, that's true.
the statute of limitations
Yeah, exactly.
have expired. But yeah, it could be a great social issue. It could be a really cool twist in the story. It could be a great monster or take on a monster, and you just can't wait to see how your players are going to respond to it. But something needs to be in there that you're looking forward to the players getting to and seeing how it plays out.
Yeah. That kind of takes me when I first wrote that question down. I was in the same boat as you, Kyle. I had like 5 or 6 different examples of things that I really bounced around in my head. And ultimately, just picking one at random. I think that something that can also drive a story very, very well is ambiguity. And I don't mean that in like you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what the answer to these things are, but the patience to be able to withhold, right? I think that's kind of a difficult thing to do as a storyteller. I'll give like kind of a weirdly niche example. If anyone who's listening is into like online creepypasta kind of stuff, most of which is just horrible, right? Most of which is unforgivably terribly written. No offense if anyone in the audience has written some of those. 2-sentence horror, just...
Well, hold on. Anybody who's watching this podcast is a person of taste and refinement.
No, of course.
And any fanfic that they would have written would have been of the highest quality.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we're talking Andy Weir kind of stuff here.
Yeah, I don't think he knew. I don't think he meant fanfic in the new sense. Fanfic almost exclusively refers to inappropriate content.
no, not quite.
I'm so old.
It used to refer to mostly inappropriate content. Not so much anymore.
Well, what's it referred to now?
Literally anything written about a work that is not identical to the work before.
See, I'm still stuck on the old definition because, like, I don't count self-inserts as fan. People will be like, I wrote a self, I just won't even look at it. But then it'll be like, you try to watch My Hero Academia and you're like, you type it in the search bar and then you get bombarded and the next 20 results, you're like, my eyes! So you're trying to click on the link to see the show. You know what I'm talking about, Kyle.
I know exactly what you're talking about, unfortunately.
All right. So my example.
A certain rule of the internet that
You
we will
guys are-
not speak.
You guys are hanging out parts of the internet that I'm not apparently.
No.
so-
It's just, you'll see it now. Trust me. My story I'm bringing
your
up
recommended feed.
Yeah, I know.
called The Whistlers, I believe. It's kind of a niche example. And spoilers, if you want to go read it, please go read it. It's an excellent story, and it's free. The crux of the story is basically there's this group of people that are out in the wilderness. They're camping and they're adventurers and they're trying to discover these things called the Whistlers, right? There's all these local legends about them, but it's the equivalent of like Bigfoot. They're like, who cares? But they're interested, so they go out and they explore. It's in the Pacific Northwest. It's bitterly cold. It's pretty wet. So it's inhospitable for a good portion of the trip. And while they're out in the woods, they start to hear this whistling, right? And it's not like a classic creepy 1940s gangster whistling while he's walking down an alley towards you snapping. There's this kind of animalistic tone to it. It sounds like almost like a bird call, and it follows them and it kind of surrounds them and it sets this very tense tone in the story. And again, if you want to read it, please skip ahead or go read it now and then come back because I'm about to spoil a lot. But the way the story handles the Whistlers is excellent, in my opinion, because not only do you genuinely never see them throughout the entire length of the story, but it is their presence that brings out the monster in the characters, right? So the characters start becoming paranoid. They start distrusting each other. A huge element of the story is that the Whistlers have a psychological effect. So members of the party begin to like for example, there's a scene where one of the guys starts like whooping and hollering in the middle of the night, kind of like alerting them to their position, and he starts whistling, and they freak out and they don't know what to do, right? And you don't know if he's been like possessed or taken over or what's happening, and it plays really well with perspective. So you never see his perspective. You see a couple of the other characters and how they're trying to balance, what do we do with this? I mean, he's a loved one for some of the people on the trip. How do they handle it? And in the end, really all of the characters end up suffering for what they choose. If they make a wrong decision, they are paid back for it. And it's expertly done. I think it's tied very, very nicely. But the danger is not even really a twist, right? And that can be an excellent thing to do in a story. It's just this measured introduction by the author of there are stakes. I don't need to tell you what they are. I can show you how they affect the characters. Like, you don't have to see this grotesque 30-foot tall monster chasing them through the woods to know they're scared. I can show you that they're scared. I can show you the psychological downfall of this group.
Show, don't tell, always.
Precisely. And I think that, at least in D&D, that is one of my favorite things to bring in, right, in Measure. Maybe you don't know why this thing's here, right? You can reason. I'm not going to leave you all the breadcrumbs, though. I want you to think on it for the next 5-6 sessions. Maybe you don't really understand this guy's motivations quite yet. And, those are kind of simple examples. But I really do think ambiguity is your friend.
Yeah. Well, you brought up ambiguity at the beginning. It reminds me of Jaws. Now, Jaws was a movie that came out in the
This is
early
a classic
70s.
enough that I know about Jaws. We're good.
I just wanted to make sure, you 12-year-olds.
I've
You hear
heard
that,
of
Kyle?
it. I've heard of it.
Oh, God.
Never watched it.
You've never watched Jaws.
No.
All right. So Steven Spielberg, I assume you guys know who that is, struggled when he was making the movie because, you heard of him?
I
Just
don't
a
know
little
much
bit?
about him. I just know he's a very famous movie
I raised
creator.
him, and
I think he made, what did he do? I think he did Transformers.
He did E.T. I know you've watched that several times.
Didn't he
Okay,
also
yeah.
do Jurassic Park? You mentioned E.T.
Yes.
or Jurassic Park?
I know he's watched.
Jurassic
I know he's
Oh,
watched
yeah,
E.T.
that's true.
It was one of his favorites growing up. So, in any case,
He go home.
The Thing.
all right. So, in any case, Jaws, when he was making Jaws, the robot that they had built never worked right. So they actually didn't show the shark until the very last, scene in the film. And that worked. It's just like you were talking about. They weren't able to show the shark, so they just kept showing the results of the shark being around, and that ambiguity built that sense of unease, terror. We're afraid of what we don't know. So if you're running a game where you're really wanting to pull the people in, give them a little bit less clarity.
Yeah.
But that also means you have to give them more hints and whatnot. You can't just give them nothing, right? You got to give them stuff to pull them in, and stuff to go, what is that? What's going on? So, tease the crap out of them. So.
See, that's always been a problem for me, is that if I have ambiguity, I don't let it sit long enough. That's been my weakness as a storyteller.
Well, there's that urge for them to understand your world, right? So you kind of want to, and so but that's the thing. We're having fun. We're playing a game, right? So at the end of the game, you go, yeah, I could have teased them a little longer, or maybe I let that one go too long. So what? Next game, you do something different.
I do think as well, it's not every story benefits from it. It's not a universal solution. The same way that like ketchup isn't. It's pretty universal. It's good a lot of the time. There are a lot of foods I don't want ketchup in. Like a lot of soups wouldn't really benefit from some ketchup.
Chocolate cake.
Yeah,
Steak.
there you go.
Do not put ketchup on your steak. Wait,
I feel like ours
Do
were less
not put
controversial.
ketchup on your steak.
what?
Do not put ketchup on your steak.
But
You can't sit at the campfire with us if you put ketchup on your steak. Yeah,
unless
you
you
can.
have money.
Yeah, you can.
Just bring your money.
We're
and
not
then you
turning
can-
anybody away here, but we might tease you a little bit.
There's this, I think there's this benefit to ambiguity that is kind of like you were mentioning. It's intrigue, it's interest. I've always heard in writing stories that you presume your audience is smarter than you're giving them credit for. that things that may not seem obvious to you when sitting on the other side of the table are easier to piece together than you might reckon. And I think, in my experience, that's generally true. In fact, if I ever switch up some things later on, which another great thing is being a DM, if you write a really long campaign later, a lot of times you can be like, I'm just going to retcon this a little bit. I've kind of done that and been called on it in ways I didn't expect, in implications.
Yeah.
Things that the players immediately thought of that I never put together that this would imply.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, I've seen my stories evolve. It's like, oh, yeah, I didn't put that together. That makes sense. Yeah, we're doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of giving the players, or even the listeners, the readers, whatever it is for your story, that credit, I feel like it opens you up to play around with where your shark is, right? You don't have to go dorsal fin, the shark erupts out of the water. Cool entrance scene. But you can just leave pieces of wreckage floating in the calm water. And the players can piece together. And I think that gives them, for lack of a better word, ownership.
Yeah. I was about to say the players tell part of are telling the story as well. So by leaving a little bit open, by not spelling everything out to the nth degree, you leave them room. Of course, you got to be careful. I love sandbox campaigns and whatnot, and for a certain, generally the more experienced players, they'll come in and they'll have an idea what they want to do, and some experienced players are actively looking to break what you've done, which are less fun than they think they are. But for,
it's fun for them.
Less for me. But the noobs, they're like, what am I supposed to do? It's like, it's your character. You can do whatever. You can dance a jig. You can, pick your nose. You can do whatever. But what am I supposed to do? And it's like, so
Supposed to is big.
So, you have to know your audience when you're figuring out how big the story rails need to be for them.
That brings an important point of level design, which is, again, I know I harp on video games, but that's something they do in video games. You have to design your world and your levels so that people have a general idea of what's next. It's really subtle sometimes, and I have never mastered it. I have a hard time figuring out how to lay out or describe the world in a way that the players go, yes, this is a clue to the next part. But if you can figure it out, it's a great way to help build a world and make everything a little more smooth.
I do want to come specifically to level design here in a minute. I could talk level design all day. I love the topic of how survival games work and sandbox games where you direct the players with requirements as opposed to boundaries. I think that's a super fun topic. But you kind of said something earlier, Rob, that segues us very well.
Okay.
And I want to hit on a little bit of what you mentioned with the player ownership and player influence. I think that in a way that differs from the three stories we mentioned, because you mentioned classic literature, you mentioned a video game, which does have a player, but often has rails, right? No matter what, you can't just go, I'm leaving this room through this door, or I'm knocking this wall down and walking outside. The game doesn't have a mechanic for that. Right. And I mentioned, written work as well. Those stories exist in a vacuum, for lack of a better word. They can consider the reader or consider the player, but they don't necessarily hinge on the person's decisions. Especially, even in a video game, most of the time it's a tiered set of decisions. You can make one of 8. And depending on which of those 8 you make, there's another branch and another branch, because those products are made before you play them and aren't altered, at least frequently enough, for it to really affect you minute to minute.
Yeah. And there's no way for them to be able to predict everything you're going to do.
Precisely.
Well, that's the unique proposition for tabletop games, is that there's maximum involvement in the story by everybody at the table.
So with that in mind, then, how do you think the element of the player influence affects a DM telling a story effectively? Where do you step in? Where do you back off? How does that augment your ingredients per se, right?
Well, I think it helps to, know your audience. And that's something, as an engineer and an introvert, it's a learned thing that I've kind of learned over the years. as a young DM, it's like, hey, I got this great story, and they're going to go through it. And now it's more of a, okay, let me put some interesting things out there and see what happens. And so, I can, from just character backstories and just having played with people for a while, go, okay, this is something that so-and-so is going to be interested in. And so, every game, maybe a third of my characters are getting something that I kind of know they're going to get excited about and whatnot. And that energizes the rest of the group. And of course I spread that around, so it's not the same, couple people. Play favorites is a great way to destroy a group and whatnot. So yeah, if they're excited, they're going to engage, they're going to help build the story.
So you would say your advice is make sure that the players, who are your binding links for this story, are integrated as much as you can.
Right.
Find specific things that call to the player character or the player at the table.
It can be, the obvious are magic items that they want, right? But, if their backstory has any depth to it, then, there are factions or races or individuals that they are interested in, or, there's the tropes. There's the druid that wants to play with all the fuzzy animals. So give them a very interesting fuzzy animal to play with or something like that.
Yep. Kyle, what say you?
So I think that for when to back off, when to interrupt, and when to start manipulating things, when to say no, depends heavily on the context of the game itself.
Okay.
Like, for example, in a low magic setting, I had a guy who had nearly maxed out strength and a warhammer, and he's like, I want to smash through this stone wall that's about 5 feet thick. And I'm like, you can, if you give me multiple successful strength checks over the span of several rounds. But then in a really, really high magic setting, like ridiculously high magic, I had a guy who was playing a monk, and he had this magic MacGuffin dust stuff that he was kind of using as hand chalk at the time. And he told me, okay, so we know this stuff interacts with magic. I'm a monk. I can catch projectiles. That is specifically a magic projectile. Can I catch it? And my response was, you have enough things that would technically make it work, and this is a high magic setting. If you can give me a good enough roll, then yes.
Okay.
And he did. And he did it so much that it became its own mechanic. So at a certain point, it comes down to what is reasonable for the world you're in.
Sure.
The lower the magic or tech or reasonability of the rest of the world, the harder it gets to do the more ridiculous stuff.
It sounds like you still leverage rolls in this, though.
A little bit, yeah. There's a certain point where it's like, hey, can I catch this missile? I mean, you have to roll for that anyways, so I'm not just going to let you have it. And there are some times, even then, where you have to say no. When your fighter says, I want to cast the spell of boom boom insta-kill on that god and take all of his power and become the god of wine and screw you, I'm awesome.
Is
And
Boom
you
Boom
say
Insta-Quill in the player's handbook or a splat book?
It's in Mordenkainen.
Oh, Mordenkainen's, okay. I figured it had to be in a splat book.
I do like how your example god here was wine, and what was the second one? I'm awesome?
Screw you, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
And to be
What a
specific-
pantheon.
Yeah, I know, right?
To be specific, that was a teenager.
The god or the player?
No,
Don't they all act like teenagers?
Well,
the
depends on the pantheon.
Greek ones too.
Yeah, that's true.
The player specifically was a teenager and hadn't played D&D before, had seen the other guys do ridiculous things, and he's like, well, I know it's not part of my class, but I'm going to cast a spell. I see a random deity or something that I think might be a deity. I want his power, but I want his power in the way that I think would be cool. And In reality, he was looking at a cleric of Lathander.
Oh, I see. Not
So-
quite a god of wine. I think
Or
slight disparity.
a little different. But there's a certain point where it's like, that is so ridiculous in this setting that I can't let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's so ridiculous in any setting, I can't let that happen. That is slightly unreasonable. Or, the big one, that's making everyone else not have fun. So you need to just cut it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have had to on multiple occasions when people persisted in just making everyone else not have fun, pull people aside and say, you need to stop,
Yeah.
or I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunate. That I've had to do that a couple times in my 46 years of playing D&D. It happens. It's tough, but generally, kind of going back to the dice. I mean, we're telling a story. You can almost think of the analogy of the multiple universes theory. There's a universe where you didn't just pick up that mug, and that's a separate universe because everything is possible and whatnot. So that the dice rolling is really those key points where the universe could go this way or that way, right?
Convergences.
And then you have the players who are obviously trying to pick a universe that is so extraordinarily unlikely, that it just isn't going to really happen, right? And so I think that's where you have to get really creative to try to salvage this before you have to, they cause enough trouble. You got to ask them to, go home. And that is, okay, yeah, you can try to insta-kill the god of Lathander and steal his powers and whatnot. But if you fail, bad things are going to happen to you. And the way to succeed is to roll, 15 nat 20s in a row. And they go, oh, well, maybe that's not the way I want to go here. And if they're immature, they want to argue you down while everybody sits there and goes, and then at that point, that's when you start going, okay, you got to get in the swing of things, or you got to go find another game.
So, kind of looking at you guys' answers. Kyle, I feel like you spoke pretty specifically to attention, right? So, not attention, the word tension, Tension, where you're balancing plausibility with desire of the players. Honestly, I mean, for me, this question I feel like pulls me to 10,000 feet every time I think about it. Where like in the example of telling a story, I'm trying to weave in elements that I want, that I think are important, or I could pay off really well later, some kind of foreshadowing that I want them to like, and then they choose a completely different direction, or they burn that element to the ground. You know what I mean? Like completely scorched earth it, and I was like, oh well, that was going to pay off in a year, but I guess it won't. But I do think that, for me, I think Kyle hits on a lot of it. The key that makes it different than just somebody interrupting you writing a book with their own chapter and writing something obnoxious in there is that you can leverage chance. Like you were saying, you can kind of leverage these moments of divergence. And that was probably the hardest thing for me as a DM, was taking myself out of the story. I think a lot of times we make the mistake as DMs of assuming it's our story that they're playing in. Right? You guys are participating in my world. That's not true. It is the player's story that you arbit to the best of your ability. So I think that kind of shift of shift of perspective was really important for me, because I struggled a lot to think like, that's not how this goes. You know what I mean? That's you're burning bridges that you shouldn't burn. But ultimately, all you're laying out are the pieces.
Right.
And the players get to play with them. Even if they look like the toddlers ramming the square peg into the round hole, it's still their game.
But, I want to modify that a little bit. It can't be their story and you're just arbitrating it. It's got to be your story too. It's got to be fun for you too. So
It's a shared story. It's everyone's world, and it's everyone's
But I
story
totally
to
get your
a certain
point
degree.
that you can't railroad them.
Well, I don't even just mean railroad. I mean, let me put it like this way. Let me give you an analogy.
Okay.
I think I made the misunderstanding of thinking I was building out, a puzzle or something. I was laying out these pieces. They were for the players to look at one at a time, figure out where they think they go, and place them down. And in reality, I'm going to go back to the toddler thing. I'm just carving round pegs and square holes,
Right.
and they're my pegs and holes to make. I
Right.
can make them as fun as I want, as little as I want, as difficult as I want them to be. But ultimately, where they go is up to the players, even if they really do want to ram the square into the
Right.
circle.
Well, I'm thinking of a great story
Okay.
that happened in our epic. So if you haven't seen
Is this
episode
when you were on the Ark?
oh,
No, he was with Gilgamesh.
No, yeah. Well, which one?
and
was
they were
first?
so much cooler than you two.
What was the guy's name? The guy. It starts with an E.
The guy that starts with an E.
I think it starts with an E. It's Gilgamesh's buddy. They're like kind of weird.
Oh.
I can't remember his name. They do a lot of wrestling and they talk a lot about each other.
Oh.
But his name is Enkidu.
Okay.
Look at that. See that?
There we
That
go.
was, that was a big pull.
Think you do.
That's, hey, if you guys haven't read the story of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, great warriors. Like I said, they write poems about each other. They're actually kind of gas. I'm not gonna lie.
Considering that's from what, Babylonian time?
Mesopotamian, so actually
Mesopotamian.
pre-Babylonian.
Wow.
I think we're safe in the spoiler.
No, I know I just spoiled that for literally almost all of
We're
you.
dropping some serious knowledge in this this podcast.
Hey, look it up. Kingdom of Ur. Great
Okay.
story.
So getting back to the story of the epic that we are doing, that's part of our business model, where we want to create these great stories that 6 tables can play at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was your table, Jackson, where one player. The entire all 6 tables were on different decks of a ship that was under storm, under fire, and on fire, in a lightning storm, and desperately trying to make it to dock before it sank and whatnot. And one particular player wanted to jump out of the boat, and he was a teenager, and with rope in hand and swim this 3-masted schooner that had at least 50 people on it to the harbor.
That he did.
Okay.
Shirtless, mind you. That he made sure to make the move first.
Well,
He tore his shirt
There were girls at the table, so
to prepare for this action. Not his actual shirt. Which, again, if you want to bring the role play off the table, that's always a good way to buy everyone in. Just tear your shirt.
so in Gilgamesh fashion, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just tying it right in. and so I don't remember. Did you adjudicate it or I did? Okay, it was you. Yeah. That okay? Yeah, you can do that. And give me a roll. And yes, you've moved the boat 5 feet closer to shore. So I mean, there are the times when a player wants to do something completely insane. You give them a small victory. They and he was super stoked that he moved it out, because I remember him coming and describing some of this to me as the head DM for this epic, and he wanted it announced to all the other tables and whatnot, which I did.
Oh, yeah.
And and of course, every table got a kick out of that. And then everybody went back to doing actual effectual things to put out the fire and get the boat to
He got
the.
a 22 on that strength check.
Was it that good?
It was a good roll.
I mean,
+3 in a
what
roll,
was he
19.
playing? Do you
He was a
recall?
barbarian.
Okay, so
Wasn't he playing like a riff on He-Man?
It was less than a riff on He-Man. It was
It was
more or
He-Man.
less He-Man, which
Okay.
is hence the shirt ripping. I think
Okay.
was where that came in. It was like He-Man.
Sure,
and,
He-Man doesn't have a shirt to rip.
before he
That's
jumped
fair.
in, did he shout "by the power of Grayskull"?
no,
or?
because he was like He-Man and Hulk Hogan.
Oh,
it was
okay.
like both of them at the same.
Well,
Which
I mean, given that he was 15, how would he even know
Thought he'd be
He-Man?
14.
well, I think it's more the archetype.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? The brawlic man of action. Few words.
Okay.
That doesn't wear a shirt and has a big sword.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can see a 15-year-old boy wanting to play that character. So.
Every time I think about that epic, I always think about, in that epic, in the final fight, we had a thing where if the players scored a certain amount of damage on the big bad, the DMs would throw a little foam ball at this guy who was standing on stage with a guitar, and we announced the beginning.
It was
of that.
lit.
It was pretty cool. I can't lie. It was really fun.
It was. When we announced that fight was happening, you said, "Kyle, I know you're waiting for this. Don't throw too hard."
Yeah.
I had walked over to my backpack on the other side of the room, pulled out a Nerf gun with a folding stock, and just
Oh yeah.
on the way back to the table and never actually shot him with it. It was just there for the joke.
I mean, you have to picture in my mind, like, I'm not a performer at heart. I have maybe the ability to do so. But
Oh,
I have
don't be
not the practice.
don't be modest.
So I'm sitting there trying to remember the words to this, like, what would you call it? A diatribe, maybe?
It's a spoken word,
Like a sonnet, maybe?
Yeah. So
Some kind of poem.
Yeah, the BBG's poem.
Yeah.
While I'm also playing the guitar, and in the corner of my eye, while I'm trying to deliver this performance, Kyle is pointing a Nerf gun at my head, and I'm having to just concentrate. It's genuinely an IRL concentration check. I'm like trying not to get. If he fires, I can't let it interrupt me because there's this rhythm I have to hold. It was in my head.
oh my god.
And when I did throw a foam ball, I did hit him right on the strings of the guitar.
Yes, you did, and it did accidentally mess me up, like genuinely. I didn't feel those foam balls before y'all threw them. I thought they were going to be way heavier. I thought you guys were about to pelt me.
Oh no, I specifically got ones that were too light to do any damage. So.
Yeah, I mean, they were. It was almost like pillow stuffing.
I know.
Yeah,
Like
styrofoam
so-
peanuts or something.
I was
Yeah,
a little worried that they were
solid
too
pillow
light to make
stuffing.
it to you. You know, so
I mean, there was some difficulty from the back of the room, I think. But actually, from the back of the room, they went over his head. They had
Yeah.
difficulty aiming.
Yeah,
oh my, that was a fun night.
that was a
I
fun
can't
one.
wait till we do the next one.
And I think I think it represents a great example of kind of all we've been talking about, where on top of all of this, there was an intangible, and we mentioned it in the first episode and probably the second episode. But I think what really drove that playtest to be so unique and so fun was just the energy. It's completely different telling a story to 5 people and telling it to 30 people, all of whom are engaged,
Yeah.
right? And when people are buying in and they're shouting at me from the stage or they're, diving, cheering as the guy
Yeah.
dives into
Yeah.
the water, it gives you this boost of engagement and this boost of fun that is so hard to get. I think that's really why theater is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not just that watching a performance is interesting,
Right.
but it's sitting in a crowd of other people experiencing that performance really ties you into the moment.
Exactly. It's that extra energy and whatnot.
It's a bit like being at a con, I would say.
Yeah.
But imagine if you went to a con with, instead of, say, 5 other people, you went with 30.
Yeah. Yeah. I when I was pitching the business idea to the game stores, I would say if you have a D&D game, it's like having a dinner party. Our thing is a kegger. So it's not quite that wild, but there's definitely a lot more enthusiasm when you get 30 people all pulling towards the same goal as opposed to 5.
I mean, in a good D&D game, everyone feeds off each other's energy, for
Right.
lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
So when everyone's having a good time, everyone's having a good time.
Right.
With maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, but also if there's 2 people hating the story, it starts to spread, and if the DM is tired and just sick of whatever he's doing,
Right.
the players are going to notice and they're going to go,
Yeah.
man, I don't like this.
Yeah. All the more reason. Make sure the DM's happy too.
Yeah.
Happy DM, happy game.
And that is part of why the DM is a player too.
Yeah.
The operating system on your computer cannot get mad at you. The pages of a book are not going to be annoyed, but the guy on the other side of the screen can be pissed off, and it's going to hurt everyone.
Yep.
Well said. Yeah, I got no addendum to that.
Yep.
Um,
That might be a good time to tie off and go to the next question.
That's exactly what I was about to do. Yeah, just before we piss him off.
Yeah.
No one's having any fun.
It's like, Kyle, you can just drop the mic now. I think.
Question.
All right.
We've kind of hit on, right, I said ingredients in the beginning, and then
Right.
we got onto all of these awesome topics.
Well, we talked about dessert.
Well, don't worry about it. We got stuff to discuss. Dessert's the last question. This
Okay.
question's before that. We kind of hit on what we think makes a story strong. How D&D can leverage those things, where we specifically think weaknesses are. And for DMs, I hope that that's important context, and I hope it's helpful. But what we're going to discuss now, we've mentioned in some previous episodes, but to kind of put it in full disclosure, we are also working a series of multi-table adventure game, essentially, right? For lack of a better word. And as we're building these out, we're fleshing out this world where there's all these characters and, you know, all sorts of hopefully good detail. And ultimately, our experience here that we're discussing is what's leading us to try and make this the best story as we can.
Right.
So since we've hit on tone, ambiguity, right, leveraging the dice, leveraging the fact that you need to enjoy it too. It can't just be the players.
Absolutely.
How do we make our world, which is called Aryan Tor, for those who aren't aware, how do we make it a complete package? How do we talk about these ingredients we've just said and tie them in to making it the best story possible? Where are we slightly different? And honestly, where are we weak at the moment? Where could we stand to gain a little more of that seasoning?
You looking at me first? Or?
I can go first if you guys would like.
By all means.
I think that Aryan Tor is well aware. We're well aware of what we're trying to do with it, and that's tone, right? I think we kind of all sat down and agreed on the tone from the beginning. It's not super dark. It's not super heavy. There are certainly real world tones in it, real world, you know, evidence, examples of things that may be dark, maybe not so good. But overall, there's a spirit of adventure. That's what presides the most. We want adventure and exploration.
Right.
And so that, as a central premise, helps fuel a lot of the other stuff. I think we have a great setting. I think the world layout in terms of the actual land masses, the continents, and the islands, I think it's very strong. I think the naval themes are very strong as well. I mean, short of us having our own music, I think we're really, really nailing the adventure part.
Right. And we're working on that.
Yeah,
So.
and that we are. I think we also have really strong magical effects, as you mentioned earlier, right? Where I think we ride a really nice line of magic, where it's not literally everything that everybody does is magic, but it's also not the rarest thing ever, right? People use it, we can blend it in effectively, and that gives us a lot of freedom within the world. I think, honestly, if anything, where we're struggling right now is the player mobility, right? Only because in setting up the story we're setting up, they kind of have to be a little railroaded for 36 players, which we've mentioned previously.
Imagine trying to get 5 people to agree with each other times 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Times 7.
Times 7 and a little. Yeah. Times 7 plus 1.
And I mean, we kind of have to do that. But I think specifically something that we'll only get the more we actually run the game and the more of these crowd events that we have is not like player engagement in the traditional sense where you affect the path one way or the other way. But how does it actually feel? How do we buy people into the moment, not just the game? Because I feel like at the table, you're using the game to buy people in 99% of the time. But, you know, in my honest opinion, the 2 times people were the most bought in at our playtest were when they were yelling at people at other tables.
I know.
And yelling at me.
Yeah, yelling in a positive way.
Yeah.
You know,
Like
not in an angry way, but you know, I love, you know, the second level was the one that was on fire, and every time the fire reached something called spirit wood, the wood would explode and shoot a jet down to level 3 and up to level 1. And so, you know, the DMs for the level 2 would tell me as the head DM, and I would announce that. And then, level 3 and level 1, come on, level 2, get it together.
Yeah.
You know? So that was
standing by with buckets ready, waiting for the net.
Yeah, I know. They were just like, what was happening at one table was affecting the others. So.
Yeah. And when, you know, as I was level 1 and there was somebody else who was level 3, when we got to send people over to level 2 to help with rolls, just perform the help action, I think that's where people were the most bought in.
Right.
And an honest to goodness weakness we have is we haven't run enough of these games to really nail down how do we do this in advance? How do we know before we run the game what's going to buy people in?
So far, we've only done that one test and a couple of story
at
tests.
That scale.
At that scale, yeah.
We've done some story tests with a regular-sized group, but that's story tests, not mechanics. And
well, we're going to run some more epics this summer, but and then we're going to be at Gen Con. So, you know,
get ready
check
for
us
that
out.
too.
Well, we hope we'll be at Gen Con. We haven't heard back if we've been accepted, but we hope we will be. In case, well, definitely we got feedback from the DMs that we could have anticipated more of the players, you know, more likely responses and whatnot. And so that is important. And it's a balance there in writing these modules in that, you know, we don't want to write DMs into a corner and give them, mountains and mountains of paperwork, do this if they do A, do this if they do B. But we kind of need to hit the big things so that they get the gist of what's going on, and they can still be flexible enough to handle the occasional person who wants to jump overboard and tow the boat to safety, right?
Yeah.
So so that's one of the things that we need to do, and in so doing, we flesh out the world a little bit more, make it easier for the DMs using our modules to understand what's going on. So I think another thing is we're trying to create this whole new world, and
A whole new world. That was the wrong key.
Okay.
I can't do that.
No,
I
you
can't
got it.
go
You
that
brand new world. I can't sing, so
low. I can't go that low.
Is that Aladdin?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was making sure.
All right, all
A
together.
whole new world, a brand new.
I'm not doing
Point
Jasmine's part.
of
Do not look at me to do
view.
Jasmine's part again.
I am looking.
You're the half Asian.
Title 9. Title 9. Throwing in the towel.
Oh my goodness.
If anyone, clearly I would be Aladdin at the table. I look by far the most like Aladdin.
You know,
It's not even close.
I gotta say, I would totally plast Jasmine's face over yours in the video.
Do not do that.
Well, no, I mean Disney would take us
Well,
down immediately. So
We can't anger the mouse.
yeah, no, the mouse is fierce.
We
Childhood
talked
crush
about
for
this
Jasmine.
before.
The
Don't anger the mouse.
Yes,
Yeah.
the mouse is a Terra-esque and with extra levels.
Hold on. Why don't you say that a little more clearly? Because it sounds like you just said the mouse is a terrorist.
That's also what I thought you said.
Well, I'm not sure how to say
Tarrasque.
Tarrasque. Okay, the mouse is a Tarrasque. Some of us run like level 1 to 10 campaigns and not the level 30 abominations that you do. I mean, it's
Not
just
me.
Yes.
It is my friend. I just play them occasionally.
now if you're one of those people that have every player at the table being some deity with a level 10 vorpal sword and whatnot, more power to you.
Path to Godhood.
Say again.
Not sponsored.
What were we originally talking about?
We were talking about the epic classic
Okay.
story of Aladdin
I have something to
and
say.
what makes it so excellent. That is improv comedy, by the way.
Okay. Oh, and how we need what more detail? I think the only thing I wanted to do, and you guys are already starting to work on it, is to flesh out some of the factions.
Yep.
That the players can involve themselves. Is that what you were going to say? I'm sorry.
Well, not quite. One of the things that I think we failed on a little bit is fun for the DMs.
Mm-hmm.
Because to a certain degree, the DMs themselves don't get to play as many characters and, do the things that a DM would normally do.
They got to throw foam balls at Jackson. I mean, come on.
They got
true.
to throw foam
do
balls.
that,
They got to throw foam balls at
They
a
should
guy.
pay us for that.
Make me sound like a stripper.
Ooh,
Rob.
maybe we can make water balloons next time.
I don't think the
Now you're
guitar-
really making me sound like a stripper, Rob. We need to not do that.
Not to mention that
Jackson,
might
you
damage the
referred to yourself
guitar.
as a woman. Last episode, you talked about being a squeaky mouse,
When?
and Jasmine is a woman.
That wasn't last episode.
No, I didn't say that. You said, "Do not make me Jasmine." That
That's
didn't
true.
occur to me.
That's my bad.
And-
That's on me.
But I wanted to be a good partner here, so I went along with it.
Continue, Kyle. Sorry.
I don't remember what I was saying.
You were talking about making it more fun for the DM.
I don't think anybody
Right,
listening to
yes.
us knows what we're saying at this point.
We might have to cut that segment just a little bit. Right. So I don't think that we've done enough for the DMs to be playing interesting characters and dealing with fun mechanics. I know there are some sadistic DMs out there who get their enjoyment by screwing over the players, but we're not doing that.
They don't. Those kind of DMs don't have players for long, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cooperative game. If everyone's not having fun, I am going to harp on that because I feel like the DMs out there really,
If the DM's not having fun, no one is.
Well, and I think the people who become DMs, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, are the kind of people who throw the party. They're the kinds of people who sacrifice their own fun and happiness so that everybody else does. And we're going to talk about how to ameliorate that a little bit.
There are ways and people who just enjoy doing DMing rather than sacrificing their own happiness. I'm one of them.
Right.
I prefer to DM than playing.
Yeah.
And
As long as everyone has +10 Vorpal swords, right?
I don't know where you're getting this +10 Vorpal sword.
Okay.
No, I heard it on
from.
the street.
It's only +8 apparently.
You only run level 23 campaigns.
No. He had to roll up a level 60 character here recently. That was my face right
How
there.
does one even?
It's not my idea. It's not my game. It is a friend who runs it, and I got dragged in because that's what the group is doing right now.
Is it fun?
Sure.
It's been fun.
How long are the turns?
Oh my God! We started playing Magic to break the monotony.
Magic the guy you're playing like Commander?
Yes.
That's incredible.
I came in. They were like playing Magic while one person had a turn because it take a half hour a turn.
Do you have like 60
my
action?
God.
Like how many actions?
I know,
do you have?
right? And for my third legendary action,
We had a monk fighter with 21 attacks.
Oh my gosh!
Every 2 or so attacks, he had something that gave him a new one.
Oh my gosh!
So for every attack he did,
A monk with 21 attacks,
Were
and
y'all
all
just,
of them ineffectual.
mowing through mobs, or were you fighting some crazy?
fighting gods.
I see.
Every part of this is fighting gods.
I see.
And I mean, not the gods from the player's handbook, which are like CR 30 tops, which I mean, usually that is the tops, but you know what I mean. These are ones that we use from a couple of third-party books that have ridiculously powerful abilities. Not to mention that the rest of my crew decided we're including high magic.
Yeah.
So, 12th level spells.
Do you guys not understand the most fun levels in DM are like 5 to 10?
Yeah.
That is your opinion.
I think
Fire
up till
ball. I got 2 words for you. Fire ball.
I think
Upcast fireball.
The first time you get to cast fireball, I did not ask how big the room is. I said I cast fireball.
I think that really, and this we're getting sidetracked, but it is an important point that I'm going to stand on. There are just some spells, fireball being quintessential, that hit so hard relative to what you're generally fighting.
Yeah.
That the payoff for me as the DM, that's more fun, is to make fireball, like make them fight something to which fireball is not an insta-win button. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So they fight a bunch of orcs all the
But
time.
you,
and
the
they're just-
first time they
they're
get
just
fireball,
laying them out.
Yeah.
Fireball clears the room.
right?
And then they come up against like a shambling mound or something, and they drop a fireball on it. Damage is halved. It has like 120 HP or something ridiculous for like whatever the CR it is. It's not very high, and the players are like, "What? We didn't just win?" And then they have to actually sit there and deal with it. Because my struggle, Kyle, and then I'm going to segue us into our last question
Right.
after this, but my struggle with the high levels are like, it's so hard to actually challenge the players without just outright boot healing them, you know what I mean? Being like, oh, you're in a different plane now. Anyway, back to the rest of the party. It's like, that guy's just dead. And then you go back. Because
That'd probably be the way I'd handle it. It's like, oh, you're 5 dimensions away now. You'll spend the next 10 turns finding your way back.
yeah, exactly. So, kind of
6 seconds, 12 seconds to get through a dimension. That's impressive.
someone's fast. They got a lot of movement.
And the fact that you do that to level 10s is just...
What? I haven't put anybody on different dimensions
We're
for
talking if
level
we were
10.
playing against level 60s.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're talking about your campaign, your crazy ass
It's
campaign.
not my campaign.
It might as well be your campaign.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Guilty by
you brought it
association.
up.
Guilty by association.
Kind of the you smelt it, you dealt it sort of thing.
You brought it up. You brought it up.
I did not bring it up.
Yes,
funny.
you did.
We have video evidence right here.
We have video evidence that yo ass brought it up.
My ass. Well, my ass is rather
Right, before
loquacious
we-
today, isn't
Before we go down this road, where
Yeah.
we start talking about everyone's butts. I'm going to bring us in, right?
All right.
We've talked about how do we tell a good story? What are the ingredients? How do we make a complete meal? You mentioned it earlier. You'd mentioned it 2 or 3 times, and I wanted to save it to the very, very end,
Oh,
where it belongs.
Sorry.
No problem at all. Good foreshadowing.
Oh.
The dessert to any story is the ending, how you tie it together. Functionally, with D&D, this is different. The ending to a campaign is not necessarily the ending of that adventure, right? The players can continue on. They can find another way.
Right.
But the ending of what you wanted to tell, I think, is sticking that landing is important. Game of Thrones is the easy example. It does not matter how strong your story is up until your ending. Not that it should overload you with fear, but if you botch the ending horribly,
I haven't watched Game of Thrones.
don't. Because if you
haven't either.
botch the ending horribly, or believe me, people who are listening,
No, I've heard that
If
the
they
Game of
heard this
Thrones
point-
got messed up pretty bad. So
it messes you up badly.
Yeah.
The reason I say that, I'm actually not going to ask you what ingredients you think make a good ending, because I think that's complicated, and I think that requires context. All I want to know is, what is your favorite ending to a story of all time? What do you think tied something together the best? You felt the most catharsis, and overall had you the most satisfied, positive or negative, with the story?
okay, I'm going to get obscure again.
Go for it.
It is
The
a.
Dead Sea Scrolls.
It's
He wrote them.
Lost him in his cave back in the day, next to the painting of the Red Hand. You know what I mean? Sorry, I mean that was just.
Nah, it's okay. 1930s
Oh,
movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's one of my 3 favorite movies.
okay.
You guys have any idea?
No.
Never heard.
I think you might have seen parts of it, but it was black and white. You probably found it boring whenever I was watching it. A man who is essentially a Boy Scout, they call them the Boy Rangers, is through some unlikely circumstances nominated as the replacement senator for a senator that died. This is in the late 1930s. There's all sorts of debates going on in Congress about the Depression and funding necessary to alleviate all the suffering and poverty. 25% of the population was out of work at the time, and so he goes up there and doesn't really know what's going on. The machine that sent him there, the governor and the people behind the machine that sent him there, wanted him because of his naivety, and he wants to build a national boys camp. So lots of things happen, but basically he finds out that they've stuffed a lot of graft in this bill that's going to enrich the machine at the expense of the people. So, all this corruption and whatnot, and he decides to fight it, and they forge papers and whatnot and frame him as the person who stuffed the thing with graft, and make it look like he was trying to make all this money. So he tries to filibuster in front of the Senate to argue that, to the rest of the senators that he didn't do all of this. The other senator from a state who looks like a paragon of virtue but is in on it all keeps finding ways to attack him in such a noble way and whatnot, and keeps all the senators against him. He stands, and this is Jimmy Stewart playing the Mr. Smith, and he passes out from exhaustion after standing there for 24 hours, and the depths of his conviction and the level of his effort and whatnot convinces the other senator first to try to commit suicide, but and then to confess in front of the entire Senate. And so, the screen ends on him being passed out, laid out on the Senate floor, while pandemonium happens in the Senate over all of this corruption now, laid bare. And so all because of one man who would not give in. It's rather poignant today, I think.
Yeah.
So,
What makes that ending so special to you?
well, I mean, at the end of the day, it was one guy who just was too decent to go along with the crowd, and that has always been something that speaks to me. Two, in my personal life, there's a tenacity that I think a lot of us allow ourselves to forget. That tenacity. So is what gets you through life, not how smart you are or how capable you are or how much money you have. Your convictions and your willingness to never give up, in my opinion, is what makes you successful in life, or gives you the chance for success.
Sure.
And so all of this kind of got built up throughout the story. So the big ending has to be the big release. It has to tie everything up, and to the bitter end, you're sitting there thinking, this, there's no way out. There's no way out. And it gets resolved all at the very last seconds in a way you didn't really expect. And some people might say, well, it's a MacGuffin, somebody confessed. But for a 1930s movie, so if you watch it in that vein, where you're a little less jaded with plot twists and whatnot, and it just kind of hits you all at once. That is the most emotional ending, the strongest ending that I can think of. Sitting here, on tap. So
Yeah, man. Kyle?
As soon as you said what was your favorite ending in any story whatsoever, my apologies. As soon as you said what was my favorite ending of any story, so many flashed in my head that I can't keep them straight. But I had one. I kind of lost it in that explanation. Somewhere along. My bad.
No, I can cut it in when you remember you cut me off. How about that?
Pardon?
I said I can cut it in if you want and then come back to you.
That sounds fine.
Sure. The example that I immediately thought of, I like TV shows a lot because I like putting them on when I'm doing other stuff.
Right.
I'll just listen to one while I'm mowing the lawn. I guess that's kind of counterproductive. But I think a show that really executes the ending well is Narcos. Now, this is cheating a little bit because the ending is historical, right? So the events were somewhat written. But something that I think really leverages the importance of the ending is not just that you get the facts right. You know what I mean? It's one thing to have the facts straight. This is how the story will end piece. But they hit this very nice tonality, kind of that you mentioned, except almost the opposite. So a good example is Narcos is specifically set in Colombia, following the drug lords, kind of during their rise and not really fall, but fall from public eye, maybe. So it's Pablo Escobar first and then the Cali cartel. And technically, the show ends a couple different times, different seasons, different story arcs are over and then begin anew. But every time it does, the tone is very consistent. And I think that's a hard thing to do, right? The way the story tells itself actually kind of surprised me because you have a guy, Pablo Escobar, in the first few seasons, objectively not a good person. Like, ordered the deaths of thousands of people, personally committed some murders according to his son, things like that. Not a good person, right? But they tell him in this very nuanced way, not where they try to articulate to you that he's a good person, but that he is a person. And they let you see a lot of his humanity. And you don't really root for him, but there are times where you're like, that was cool. Or like, I probably would have done something somewhat similar. And you empathize just a little bit with him. So that in the end, when they deliver the final notes of his story, which this is not a spoiler, it's a historical fact, he was shot and killed by the police in this last shootout. When that happens, the show purposefully has like 3 or 4 seconds of silence where all the characters are looking around at each other like, what the
now?
heck just happened?
What now?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they don't know how to feel. It's only when the people who've been liberated from this terror start cheering and they start recognizing what they've done and what they've accomplished for their brothers and things like that, that kind of the reality sinks in. And I think little moments like that, paying attention and paying respect to the tone that you've built up this whole time, because it would have been very easy for the show to just, in the last 3 episodes, make him a diabolical monster. So that when he dies in the last episode of the 2nd season, you go, fantastic, awesome, and you're ready for the next. They actually spend the last 3 or 4 episodes of that season only humanizing him. I mean, all you see him do is speaking with his father, calling his family on the phone, missing them because he can't see them. So that when he does eventually die, though he deserved it, including in real life, you can't help but go, it sets the weight of the story on you. And that's the whole thing it tries to tell, is how terrible the drug trade is, how much it's affected people negatively, and how even in this, there is pain. Anyway, that's kind of a downer, but I think it's an excellent way to tell anything.
It's deep, and it's funny. Here I told this uplifting story in a terrible time, and here you are telling about a terrible person who did terrible things. I wonder if humanizing him didn't just make it all that much more real. It's like torturing others and committing evil is a slippery slope that we're all susceptible to. There are positive attributes of some of the worst leaders. I don't want to mention the obvious one because it just he gets too much press. But I could totally see everyone close to him going, wow, that was bad. And then I'm glad they pulled back to that shot of all the people who had been under his foot, feeling the relief and whatnot, and kind of brings you so there's a shock value there, right? It's like, hey, I was starting to get okay with this guy, and then it's like you're being forced to remember, hey, this was a person who was bringing a lot of pain and suffering to a lot of people. So that's an interesting ending to it's a very good ending.
I think it's expertly done.
Yeah.
So I have 2 that I'm going to bring up as some of my favorite endings to stories, because the way they ended is not the ending you would have expected or wanted from the story. It wasn't an abject failure. There wasn't an immediate, all of this was for nothing. There wasn't a catharsis. Halo Reach.
Just absolute cinema meme.
And The Last of Us.
Bangers!
So, I know you don't know what I'm talking about.
I've read about. Well, I played the first Halo, but I see that's not Halo Reach. And as for The Last of Us, I know a little bit of the story.
So, for anyone at home who doesn't know, and Halo Reach, I'm going to be honest with you, it's been a long time since I played, so I don't remember all of the story. But it ends by you helping people get off the world you're trying to defend, because it's in space. You're playing as a, for lack of a better term, armored super soldier.
A Spartan.
Well, you're
Kyle.
It's called a Spartan, but if I say Spartan, you're going to think Hellenistic guy.
In the USMC. No,
it's
no,
Master
no.
Chief, right?
Not
No,
Master
this
Chief.
is Noble 6.
So this is
Okay.
same universe, not the same character. Most Halos follow Master Chief. This one does not.
Okay.
Yeah, different Spartan.
Specifically, like he said, this is Noble 6, and at the end of the game, you get left behind along with one of your allies who is wounded, and he is manning a gun on a hill, and you are on a field where everything just took off. There is no way for you to get off world, and you are surrounded by enemies. There's no hope of escape. And literally, the taskbar at the top just says, survive. And you won't. There's no way to win. You will die eventually.
So the game is just seeing how long you can last, how many people you can take with.
And it doesn't even really show you those metrics. It's not like an arcade game. It's
Right.
just you will die eventually, but it is in your nature as a human being to struggle for as long as you can, even when you don't think there's hope.
It's quite a metaphor, isn't it?
Sure is. And you also see the guy on the ridge who's manning a gun, who was injured, die because an alien with an energy sword impales him, and he sticks his knife in the alien's throat, and they fall off a cliff together.
Wow.
He drops the line, "I'm ready, how about you?" And you're sitting there going like, "I'm ready, how about you?" Like,
Wow.
"That's my guy, that's my coat!"
And that's when it says survive and you die eventually. And
game.
in Last of Us, you play as this gruff mid-50s guy, somewhere 40s, 50s, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Old enough to be gray-haired, gruff, and
So mid-50s is really old, is what you're saying.
gray-haired and gruff, not really old. There is a difference.
Okay, so mid-50s is gray-haired and gruff.
Yes. With a heavy masculine timbre.
Okay. How heavy?
Pretty heavy. In Joel's case, pretty heavy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Dude's a brawler.
he doesn't like anybody.
Okay.
He's suffered so much that he does not make any kind of relationships, except for the other main character of the game, Ellie, who he also does not like for about half the game, until eventually she sort of takes the role of his surrogate daughter after his had died, literally within the first chapter of the game. And there is a zombie apocalypse going on with mushrooms and spores, and she is immune.
Right.
And they go to this hospital where he's been trying to deliver her the whole game. And they say, we're going to be able to make a vaccine with her. All we have to do is crack her skull open and scrape the mushrooms off the inside of her head, killing her. And so he has to make the choice between, do I let them do this and possibly save humanity? Or do I not let them kill my surrogate daughter and possibly doom humanity? Which, I don't know if this was intended by the devs, but you cannot make vaccines for fungal infections. You have to make antifungals. There have been studies and tests to try and make a vaccine for fungal infections, but those are recent and none have, as far as I know, succeeded yet. So a bunch of idiots who were getting bitten by their own test monkeys in the zombie apocalypse using subpar tools and very little of any electricity would not be able to figure it out.
Tony Stark built this in a cave.
I'm not Tony Stark.
Okay.
But anyway, obviously, the player is not actually given a choice here. Joel chooses. He chooses, I'm saving Ellie.
Okay.
He actually, when he gets to the operating room after a very long battle throughout this hospital with the people he was up until that moment working for,
Right.
he gets in there, a surgeon picks up a scalpel and says, I'm not going to let you do this. Joe walks up, grabs the guy by the wrist that is holding the scalpel, and brutally cuts his throat open with it.
Wow.
Picks up the still unconscious Ellie, goes down an elevator where they see Ellie's somewhat mentor who gave the go-ahead to have Ellie killed for this supposed vaccine, where she tries to convince him to just let them have Ellie, and the moment she thinks she's got him, he pulls out a gun from under the girl he's carrying and shoots her in the head. And then he drives off with Ellie in the passenger seat, and she wakes up. She goes, did it happen? And he lies to her. He tells her, there's tons of other immune people, and they haven't been able to do anything yet. They can't make anything from immune people. He lies to her about what happened to protect her, after just slaughtering everyone that was in that hospital.
So is it the nuance that you appreciate the most about that?
I like that ending because it is true to the characters. Ellie is staking most of her value on being this immune person and had planned her in to be at this hospital, perhaps not that literally as would have been in the story, but still she was expecting it, and she is severely disappointed and depressed when she finds out it's not ending there. And Joel cares mostly for himself and not the rest of humanity. I mean, he's been killing all sorts of humans and people and refusing to make connections his whole life. He chooses to save her over the rest of humanity. And it is in keeping with their characters, and you don't expect it. You don't expect Ellie has to die. You expect, oh, they drew something out of her blood, and now we have a cure. And
So it's in keeping with the tone as well.
it's in keeping with the tone as well. It is these two stories, Reach and Last of Us, made their tone about the situations that they're setting up, and they end with characters making decisions or in situations that players would not expect. There is no immediate failure or a setup for a sequel, and there is no instant success. Everything has been validated. It sits somewhere in the middle. And where Last of Us eventually got a sequel, Reach will never have one.
To tie all this off, the one thing that seems to be a common frame in everything we talked about is that the ending shows the characters being true to themselves more than anything else, right?
Yep.
Agreed?
Yeah.
Maybe
Hopefully
that
that's informative.
Yeah, maybe that's a
Well,
key factor for a good story.
people, if you've listened up to this point or at all, thank you very much for joining us, sitting down by the fire and letting us take up an hour or so of your time.
Absolutely.
Do you guys have any closing thoughts before we go out?
Nope.
Awesome.
I think it got pretty deep there at the end, didn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Hopefully that was informative and enlightening, and hopefully you picked something up about writing a good story along the way. You guys go ahead and get a long rest. We've got First Watch. Thanks.
good night.
Good night.